Well, what about a wheelbarrow?
A wheelbarrow? No, far too small.
Maybe a pickup truck?
Still too small, sir.
Maybe a moon snail from outside of Kimura?
It's a bit slow, but that might just work.
What are you two going on about?
Oh, we're trying to prepare for Tetsuzan Portable.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, with the base game life cycle of Monster Hunter Wilds nearing a close, and we're approaching the sort of hibernation state that the game will be in until the eventual expansion, I just find myself looking forward towards the future of Monster Hunter and other things on the horizon. Of course, we have Stories 3 in just a few months, and I am excited about that, but as far as the more standard expected combat style of a Monster Hunter game, the mainline games, the immediate future considerations are, of course, the Master Rank expansion for Wilds, which I've talked about a decent amount recently, and my thoughts on that too. But past that, beyond that, there is almost definitely going to be a second mainline Monster Hunter title that counts as a 6th generation game. Every generation has had a second game of some sort. For most of these in the first few generations, these second games are ones designed for portable systems as the main differentiating factor there, but for the more recent generations, these second games are ones that are built to have shorter hunts, and especially a more arcade-like feeling to them. The most recent examples, of course, being Generations and Generations Ultimate as the 4th generation version of this, and then Rise and Sunbreak as the 5th generation equivalent. That said, we have no reason to believe that this won't happen again for the 6th generation, so let's talk about some expectations regarding that. First thing that I want to note as we dive in here is that there used to be a lot of talk about there basically being two separate teams that worked on Monster Hunter mainline games. One team that worked on the first game of a generation, which tends to be the home console version, and then one team that works on the second game, the portable title. I'm not exactly sure when the change happened, but at least in recent years, it has not quite been that cut and dry. It's much more accurate to say that there is one really big team that works on the mainline Monster Hunter games, and they split their resources a little bit depending on what they are currently trying to develop. And the big main difference between the home console and portable game split is actually the game director for that game, as a lot of the actual people making the game below that level are a lot of the same people regardless of which style of mainline game it is. Every portable, or at least every one that we consider to be a portable game as far as this comparison, was directed by Ichinose. Even as far back as the first generation with Monster Hunter Freedom 1, he directed Monster Hunter Freedom Unite as well though, so he did have a major part in a sort of home console styled expansion, showing that he can absolutely have his goals lined up with these sort of main game styles, but simultaneously, whenever he is given proper free reign over a fresh game, those are when we have gotten the more major offshoots and variations of the Monster Hunter formula within mainline games. Hunting styles and hunter arts and generations were such a wide difference from the way that hunting had been done before that. Switch skills and wirebug skills in Rise and Sunbreak as well, and of course all of the other dozens of things that make those games unique from their predecessors, but those are an easy one to point at and say, this is something this game director likes playing around with, is a lot of personal choice in your moveset. That said, Wilds was directed by the same game director as Monster Hunter World, and so expectations are that the next Monster Hunter game in the mainline series will be the Ichinose helmed take on 6th generation Monster Hunter, the portable title, and I don't really want to use the word portable too much as the easiest way to distinct between the games, but I should specify here that I think that term might be going out of date sooner rather than later, as there are rumors of a Nintendo Switch 2 version of Monster Hunter Wilds already in the works, and outside of potential exclusivity contracts with Nintendo themselves, I'd say there's a high chance that any title developed with portable in mind will probably be simultaneously released for other platforms too, even if it is at heart a portable title, meaning the other consoles and PC at the same time as a Nintendo Switch 2 release, as Capcom has clearly started to get enough value from spreading the games across multiple platforms to make it really worth doing. All that to say, the game may end up being portable only in the sense that the graphics will likely be limited by what the Switch 2 could pull off, but again, there is potential of a Switch 2 port of Wilds itself, and if we get that, we will probably have a pretty good idea of what a newer Monster Hunter game would look like on that system too. To say whether it will be literally a portable title or not is unclear, but what matters is that we are talking about a game helmed by the same game director as the previous portable titles, and one that would likely end up with a similarly fast-paced and arcade-like style. So that out of the way, what do I properly expect? Well, another variation of cool weapon actions that are unique to the new game is something that I absolutely think is pretty much a guarantee with Ichinose's Monster Hunter games. I mentioned them earlier, but it was hunting styles to define overarching movesets, and then hunter arts for special moves with gauges that you had to fill before you could use them in the 4th gen portable game Generations. And then for Rise and the Sunbreak expansion, it was switch skills to define the overarching moveset, and then wire bug skills as the special moves with a gauge that filled through time rather than through combat actions like the arts in 4th gen. But the point is that these systems have a ton of similarities to each other, and the main thing it boils down to is giving the player as much choice as possible, the ability to actually customize their own playstyle, and then offering big flashy finishing move type things for every weapon, even with the full knowledge that they might only be in that game and might not carry over to future games, never returning for future entries in the series. Similar note to this though, I want to bring up Hunting Horn as a weapon. Hunting Horn in Rise and Sunbreak was a totally unique beast. The moveset was unlike any other version of the weapon that had existed before, and it's very different from Wild's Hunting Horn, which has come afterwards as well. The only version of the weapon to play that way is in this one singular game. For that game, they totally redesigned that weapon, and sure, some parts of it stuck into Wild, but it's still a vastly different experience, and I think that's a great example of how willing they are to get much more experimental with the portable line of games. Generally speaking, the first game of a generation, the home console game, is the more tame experience. It's sort of grounded in realism and ecology a little bit more, and it has the world feel like a flowing tapestry that all makes sense, and at least recently, the mainline sort of home console games have also been referencing past home console games. And then there's the second game of a generation, generally the portable title, and that is the experimental one, messing with mechanics that are a much farther leap, and sometimes those mechanics carry over into future games, other times they are left behind. And I sort of love that they have this split because it's part of why every person has their own personal favorite Monster Hunter game, and it can be even as obscure as loving specifically Monster Hunter Try, but not feeling the same way about Portable Third or 3 Ultimate, because the games just have their own quirks and separate them much more than most modern game series are willing to risk between entries in the same series. What I think is interesting to note is that a lot of things I would normally say are more expected from the portable title have already been put into Wilds, which is not the portable title of 6th generation. Things like faster hunts, as fast hunts make sense for a portable title, which is intentionally trying to make use of short bursts of free time because you can carry it around with you, as opposed to being more designed to keep you in a hunting loop for hours on end. Obviously, the portable games do want to keep you hooked for hours as well, but they have a side objective of trying to make sure you can get as much enjoyment as possible in brief periods of like 10 minutes or wherever the amount of time that you can find during the day, and so quicker hunts and a faster paced gameplay loop is a sensible way for them to do that. But Wild itself is already doing that with its base roster monsters. At least they're quite fast quests. Obviously the increased challenge higher star rank quests have gotten much longer, but I would expect the speed of hunt on base monsters to be similar to that in a portable game, similar to the base monsters of Wilds. The other big thing is tracking. Tracking has been a big part of the Monster Hunter series since the beginning, first just being literally finding a thing through building up knowledge of the way that it moves around the map, knowing what zones it can be in, and trying to meet it there, up to Monster Hunter World making the much more in-depth tracking system where you look for footprints or markings the monster left, stuff like that. And I think that that was an incredible leap for the concept of monster tracking. But in Rise and Sunbreak, we started to just like psychic link to an owl in the sky who would tell us where monsters were before we even left the camp, and that made sense for the portable style of game, for the more arcade-like gameplay, for the more faster pace that they were going for. And in Wilds, we seemingly just know where monsters are at all times now with no further explanation. Whether tracking is important to the identity of Monster Hunter or not isn't something I'm trying to debate right now, but I just wanted to point out that that is something that I would generally expect to see more in a portable title than a home console title, and so I expected to say the same way for the next Monster Hunter game, as it will be the portable equivalent. And honestly, that might just become the new norm in general, with Wilds having taken that approach as well. The other thing that I sort of want to touch on is if the next portable style game would be a compendium game, something like Generations and Generations Ultimate, where they just put in every single returning monster they physically could, which was an awesome experience, especially for me as someone who played it before any of the older Monster Hunter games, and the simple answer is probably not yet. The reason that that game happened the way it was because they were moving to a whole new style of hunting and a new engine in the 5th generation. So they literally just ported every fight they possibly could from earlier generation games to give one last hurrah to all of those old monster fights. A lot of the fights weren't even changed or updated for Generations. They weren't properly balanced around the generation specific mechanics and weapons. They were just there because they could be there, and while I love that they did that, I love that it happened, I think we are still multiple games away from a similar thing for the modern games, because they would basically only be able to pull from Worldborn, Risebreak, and now Wild, which is a comparatively quite small pool of creatures, especially when you consider that these games actually have a fair amount of overlapping monsters with each other's rosters to begin with. That said, I expect something much more similar to the style of Rise and Sunbreak. Obviously, the ideal choice would be something completely brand new as far as the story and setting and place and stuff goes, but a couple of ideas is something that they could do. One is that that they could just go for a different time period of Monster Hunter. They could go more primitive, like do it back in the past, but not quite ancient civilization past, dive into concepts like origin species for Frontier if we really go back, where they're supposed to be like ancient ancestors of current monsters, because I've always really loved that as a concept of a monster variation. Or they could go the opposite way, go a bit further into the future. Hunters get a bit more technological feel to them, but honestly, in either direction, I'm not really sure those vibes would even feel like Monster Hunter, because a big part of what gives this series the feeling it has is a sort of mix of futuristic and primitive that it already is. Big prehistoric looking monsters, but we don't just have sticks, we have plate armor sets, we have big metal weapons, we have weapons that can cause explosions, full-on high-powered rifles that fire ammo that's made from nuts to perfectly sort of mix those two time periods together. It's like a mix of ancient and modern that makes Monster Hunter what it is. So deviating from that might not actually be great in practice, but I still think it's an interesting thing to ponder, and it could be an interesting thing to explore for the sake of a portable game. One other thing that they could do, I don't know if this would be a popular opinion or not, but what if they make a portable game being where they choose to re-explore underwater combat? Maybe we get underwater combat as the focus of a portable game. I've always said I would love for them to revisit underwater combat. Maybe it would be too much of a sort of investment for them to do it as the sort of home console game, considering it was already the main gimmick of 3rd gen, but I could definitely see the possibility of them being willing to go into it in a portable game, not having it be necessarily the focus gimmick, but having it be the sort of enabler. Like maybe they have movesets that exclusively work underwater as a way to work in the sort of switch skill hunting style type system with underwater combat. Mechanically speaking then, past all that, I would just love more movement. I enjoy fun movement mechanics more than pretty much anything else in video games, and that was a big part of why I like the wire bug system in Rise Break. It not only made you generally faster, but especially if you knew how to use it right, you could travel to places that you simply couldn't get to otherwise. You could get to places much more effectively. The free movement, like the vertical movement up the side of mountains, the silly paths that you can use wire bugs to travel along, all of it just felt really fun to me, and I'd love some sort of evolution of that kind of movement mechanic in the next game directed by Ichinose as well. Honestly, I love the way that wire bugs worked, but I never fully expect anything to return exactly one-to-one from a previous Monster Hunter game to a new one, and so what I expect is some sort of kind of similar system that allows for vertical freedom and exploration, as well as skill expression in the movement itself, but something that is also different. I wouldn't be surprised if we can run on walls and run up walls again, as I think that is universal enough to say that, yeah, you could have that in multiple games, but maybe this time we get like a double jump or like an air burst of some kind, and you can use that to like jump between cliff lines, to do extra jumps and do vertical attacks from the ground, but then obviously making the whole game based around that and changing the way that the game works because of it. Point being, I think there is a ton of potential for unique movement in the portable games, even more than the home console games, and as someone who loves that kind of stuff and really truly adored Rise Break, I would love to see them push the envelope in that department once again. Overall, I guess what today was about was saying it's very likely that a portable game may already be in the works. Probably not like full-on hard development mode until the Wild's expansion is wrapped up, but they are likely at least in the early concept stages, if not even further than that. Whether this game is literally considered a portable game or not, it will likely follow the same pattern of the way that the portable games have been developed, and their more experimental nature. And at least until further notice, I expect Ichinose to be the director for the next game, as that's the way that it's been for every portable title in the pattern that the series has had since it first began. And it's his vision for gameplay that I think has really defined these recent titles and made them feel so different. And honestly, whether the specific variation of portable title and we get is my personal cup of tea or not, I will always enjoy the experimental nature of it and the fact that it is so different from the home console versions of Monster Hunter games, and I look forward to it whenever it happens and whatever it ends up being. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, everyone, and let me know your own thoughts on this thing down in the comments below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.